License costs are skyrocketing. Enterprises and governments are in turmoil. The future is uncertain. Where can we turn for solutions to the VMware crisis? Let's meet the Microsoft solutions we need right now. I'm Michael Richardson, CTO of Dynamic Consultants Group, and your host for this exciting podcast series. I have the honor of welcoming the one and only Ernie Costa, Microsoft MVP and all-around technical mastermind. Ernie, could you share a little bit about yourself?
I admit I've never been called a mastermind, so I am like super happy that that's an adjective and not something worse. But thank you for that. Uh, Ernie Costa, Microsoft MVP, like you said. I'm also a manager of the cloud operations team over at Commvault. That's the backup software company you may or may not know. If you don't know, you should go look it up. I deal with internal IT for organizations, so I'm not dealing with customer front end stuff. But at Commvault, we obviously deal and touch with a lot of hosting solutions like Hyper-V, VMware, things like Nutanix and Proxmox. So this is a conversation that's near and dear to my heart. Happy to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have you on and excited to see where this conversation goes. So what can you tell us about what's going on with VMware right now and why should organizations care about this topic?
Sure. And I'm going to just preface this by saying I don't have an MBA. I'm not a business guy, but like without throwing an absolute temper tantrum, what's going on is just basic corporate greed that we've seen this happen before with Broadcom. The non-technical answer is they're trying to make as much money in as short of a time frame as possible without considering the ramifications in the long term. So you're going to have these, the people that are the business decision makers there that are rich. They're just going to get richer, and customers that are affected by this are going to get a lot poorer from the licensing changes. And my prediction is in 10 years, we're going to look at this as a case study and how to ruin a really, really good thing that VMware had going for themselves.
Yeah. So how would you compare this to like, okay, I sell this type of jeans and now I'm going to jack up the price. I mean, why is this any different than I'm just going to raise the price of my product?
Correct. So it's like there's two things happening here. Like it's one thing if you're a luxury niche brand. So we'll use your jeans example, and you sell this product that's like really good denim, and you realize, hey, look, I can sell this for twice as much because there's that much demand. That's one thing, and people will justify spending that much money, and you're going to lose some people to price attrition, right? But like there's still that quality associated behind it. The problem is Broadcom has a history of decreasing their quality with their acquisitions. So this isn't just like FUD and guessing and taking a wet finger in the wind and seeing what's going to happen. We've seen this before with other Broadcom acquisitions. The quality of service is going to decrease. They've already laid off literally tens of thousands of people that worked for VMware, developers, customer support, sales engineers, people that professional services, licensing experts. And it was chaos for the first couple months that this stuff happened. So this is more equivalent to not just jacking up the price of those really expensive jeans, but getting your denim now from the same people that, your budget clothing companies are getting them from. And, without getting into discussions about like Coach and Gucci, it's you see that happening across the corporate world everywhere. It's just how can we save as much money as possible and make as much money as possible?
Yeah. A stat that I think is really relevant that I think fits into this discussion is about 75% of enterprises use VMware at some level. And so this really impacts tons and tons of organizations. And something that I think is really key to consider too is the speed at which this price has changed, right? Mm-hmm. So, we're seeing 10x, sometimes 30x, like literally 30x price increases. And if you're on VMware, like, can you just like up and move? Like, is that a thing? You know what I mean? What's your thought on that?
So I've heard same things with the price increases. I've seen tangible license, like I've seen physical paperwork. I can't talk about like what those numbers are, but you're in the right realm of reality. That is how much they're increasing it. I've also heard people that are those Fortune 500, Fortune 100, those bigger customers that Broadcom's targeting. I've heard them turn around and say things like, oh, well, we were able to negotiate and get prices down cheaper, but only for like the first year. And they're putting a gun to our head and saying after year 2 and 3, we will get that 3, 5, 10x increase. So it's like, it's addressing that short term problem, but at the sake of like your future investment is like they're going to walk away anyway unless they come up with money, or these customers are going to go out of business if they're hosters because they can't afford to pay it and their margins are now non-existent. You know, they're not making money anymore.
Yeah.
It's a real scary thing. And again, I'm not an MBA, I'm not a finance guy, but it doesn't take rocket science to know you can't sell $20 pizza slices and expect customers to keep wanting to buy the pizza slices.
Right. Yeah.
Especially if you keep putting worse and worse ingredients in your pizza.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, it's not like when you talk about moving, okay, let's say you're on VMware and you're like, okay, maybe I want to move. This isn't a small undertaking, right? Like, not to say it can't be done, but it's not like,
Right.
oh, well, we'll just a couple weeks, we'll just get stuff moved over, and you know, this is complex, a lot of planning. I mean, this is like, oh, we're gonna switch power companies.
Right. It's not just
Like,
a quick.
right, like,
There's
oh,
logistics.
there's yes, so it's complex. So that's you know, a big deal. So anyway, all that to say, this is a really important topic for organizations. I hope they're really taking this seriously. So kind of the next you know, question and topic I want to go to, and this is a little tongue in cheek, but I think the question that a lot of people really want an answer to is, why in the world would I leave VMware? I know it's getting expensive. Why would I leave the gold standard and go to a second-rate platform like Hyper-V, right? Why would I do that?
So I hear two things there. And the first thing is gold standard. Like, let's call spade a spade. VMware, the VMware product as of today, like in 2024, VMware product is hands down the most complete package for customers when you're talking about hosting VMs, building out advanced automation, having access to really rich and deep APIs, a really good single pane of glass management experience. And if you're like into like measuring metrics and statistics and build back data, like you get all of that in a complete package. It costs a small fortune, but like it is the gold standard. You said it perfectly. With that being said, though, like, how many people need that? And is it worth the insane increase in cost, right? Like it's like a dollar to value ratio. I'm willing to bet, other than a very small percentage of those Fortune 100, 500 customers, however many they're focusing on, top 50, I keep hearing different numbers. I'm willing to bet that outside of them, the answer is not many. And even inside that group of people, the answer is not many. It will take some time to change the way you do business, but the reality is VMware mostly used to host VMs. There are other solutions that do that and do it very well, very securely, very maturely. And Hyper-V, the Hyper-V product itself, is hands down the best solution to go to after VMware. And I would even make an argument saying it's better than VMware for what you need it to do. So, you know, there's a lot of nuance there and a lot to unpack, but like there's just FUD that needs to be dispelled about that statement.
Yeah, no, that's a great overarching, you know, and I think I'm right in line with you. You know, VMware is a great product, or it wouldn't be, you know, so widely used. But
Correct.
to say that it's the only viable or even only good solution is definitely not true. And I think that's what we keep seeing, you know, out there. We've seen a lot of that in the conversations that are happening, and I think that's where a lot of this passion from you and from me comes from. Is I personally think Hyper-V is an incredible platform, and so to say, well, where else are you going to go? I don't think is really a valid kind of thought. You know, there are great platforms other than VMware, and I think Hyper-V is one of those. What when you think about what organizations need, I mean, how do you feel like Hyper-V addresses those core needs that organizations typically have? And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Sure. Yeah. So I think you have to break this down again to what type of customer are you talking about? And we'll just focus on the large, massive enterprise type of customer. And then your small mom and pop SMB, like I need to run 50 VMs type of customer.
Hmm.
So the massive enterprise, they're going to start worrying about like mission critical workloads, things that need to be 24/7, 365, have like support groups that are backing them around the globe. Maybe they're running their own data centers, they have their own data center engineers, whatever it may be. How can those enterprise customers trust Hyper-V to kind of like keep that stuff running? The simple and like most regurgitated answer, but it's the most true answer, is because Azure uses it. Like,
Right.
this isn't just marketing mumbo jumbo that Microsoft makes up when they talk about this topic. There are 300 physical data center buildings around the world, in different countries, in different regions, and in regions that you may not even expect them to be in, like China or even like US government, like highly secure regions, that run Hyper-V as the core OS, as I should say,
Yep.
the core hypervisor on their hosting platform. So they're
Hmm.
like, it's already tried and tested, and there's nothing different between that hypervisor that's running on their hardware in Azure than what's running on your Windows Server 2022 box or your Azure Stack HCI box, or the Windows 11 machine that I'm talking to you over right now that's using Hyper-V for its VBS security stuff. Like, it's all the same hypervisor at the end of the day. So you have a product that is literally, I hate to use the word being like QA'd by the public, but it is. And every time there is a problem, those problems get fixed and make their way upstream and then downstream. So it's just a product that's being used everywhere. Even like in Xbox, you always hear that one too. And it's always like, oh yeah, it is being used in Xbox. Think about the millions of people that play video games every day.
Yep.
It's just more and more sample size.
Yep. Yep. No, that totally makes sense. And when you talk about that enterprise scale client, it makes a lot of sense to make the comparison to Azure, right? Azure, you talk about the scale of how many data centers they're running in and all of these things, but I mean, they have their own financially backed SLAs on Azure that they have to
Hmm.
meet. If they couldn't meet
Hmm.
them, if they couldn't deliver the most demanding mission critical workloads, they wouldn't have a service. I mean, no one would use
100%.
Azure, but it grows, year over year, because it
Hmm.
really is a great platform and a great service powered by Hyper-V.
Hmm.
So definitely, enterprise ready. Definitely can't call it second rate. It's not. It's a really enterprise ready platform. So one of the other topics around this though is not just, okay, does Hyper-V work or does VMware work, and can I really trust it to run workloads, but especially in your role where you're at, you understand the supporting ecosystem
Yep.
is hugely important. Like,
Yep.
even if you said, okay, well, VMware, we've got VMware, great, everything's good, and that's all you had, you would not have a complete package. You need to have,
Hmm.
BD, uh, backup and recovery. You need to have
Hmm.
security. You need to have, I mean, there's just a lot of other things around that,
Sure.
support,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that. And the same is true for Microsoft's products, right? So what about the supporting ecosystem for Hyper-V? Tell us about it.
So first and foremost, like obviously I'm a Commvault guy, so I'm gonna, shill a little bit here and say that the backup story is first of all very 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 mature. Products like Commvault obviously back up and support all versions of Windows Server, um, including Azure Stack HCI. So 22H2, 23H2 is already tested and certified. So backup products are right lockstep in line with Microsoft to make sure that they work. And companies even like Veeam and Cohesity and Rubrik and all them, they all have support for Hyper-V based hosting solutions if you're talking about, VM workloads and whatnot. There's a little nuance there with the other companies when it comes to like, well, how do I back up my Kubernetes clusters? I can't speak to them. I can tell you Commvault, I personally have tested and used our own software to back up Kubernetes clusters that are running AKS hybrid on Azure Stack HCI or Windows Server. They work perfectly fine. Backups work perfectly fine. So even like those containerized workloads are capable. You mentioned security. So like AV vendors, if you decide to not use Windows Defender, which comes, by the way, free with Windows Server. So like you're crazy not to use a perfectly free and really, really good AV solution. Um, I know for a fact that Carbon Black works on it. I know CrowdStrike works on it. There's others, obviously, but those are two that we have used at Commvault internally over the last half decade at scale on our Hyper-V and Azure Stack HCI clusters. And again, internally, we are hosting thousands of VMs on Azure Stack HCI and Windows Server that have all these things I've mentioned and are working perfectly fine, including automation in front of it, which is probably the third part of your question. You know, the VM life cycle of making VMs in Hyper-V. A lot of people think it's, you know, typical Windows, open up the snap in and you got to make a VM and then you got to go to failover cluster manager and add a VM there and make it highly available. No, first of all, you have PowerShell to do all of it if you're a scripting person. If you're looking to manage data centers at scale, you have System Center that is still alive and well and supports all these things. So System Center, Virtual Machine Manager, and the rest of the System Center suite. And you have Windows Admin Center, which, you know, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of, other than for like very basic tasks, but it is a mature product that has come a very long way in a rich HTML5 presentation. That's also available in the Azure portal. And that's the kind of the fourth piece to your question, the automation around that VM life cycle, you know, the CRUD, you'll call it, create, you know, update, delete. Azure Stack HCI specifically has a direct, you know, kind of interface to Azure portal through the resource bridge. And you can make and create things using the Azure portal web UI. You can use Bicep, you can use ARM templates. So Microsoft is rapidly advancing down this track to catch up with things that VMware kind of always did well. But there really is no excuse not to at least take a look at it and see what it can do, let alone understand it is a solution solver.
Yep, absolutely. And you know, and that some of that goes with monitoring too, which I know with you get some of that with System Center platform, you get some of that in Azure with the hybrid solutions. And so but you know, beyond that too, other vendors connect and can monitor Hyper-V and the Windows Server platform as well. I mean, it's very mature, and I really appreciate the insight into the scale at which even internally at Commvault you guys are doing, right? It's at enterprise scale effectively with complex workloads and all of the bells and whistles. And you know, that's how many enterprise organizations are doing it. So absolutely a viable solution, tested at scale with all the bells and whistles and everything. So I think that's really important to understand. So my hope is that this really helps to dispel, you know, what you call the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of organizations when they're thinking, okay, well, can I move off of VMware, and are there any other enterprise ready solutions? And I think, you know, I really think Microsoft's got a complete package, top to bottom, from, you know, we've got a hypervisor, security, all the way up to management at scale and connectivity to public cloud. I mean, they've really got a great end-to-end story with all of this and latest features, right? You know, you mentioned containerization, you know, AKS on Azure Stack HCI is a big deal, and even advancing into some of the platform services, you know, like, hey, can I run SQL, Azure SQL on-prem? That's I think still in preview, but like it's just incredible the way they're blurring that line between public and private. So really mature, really, you know, heading in the right direction with the roadmap, which I'm nervous about for VMware. They have a great platform now, but is it getting all the life sucked out of it today? I don't know. So
yeah. I think there's one thing that I see a lot online, especially if you like dive into the bowels of Reddit and Twitter and get gross and yucky looking at it. There's always this one common theme I see come up, and it's not really my job to like dispel this, but it angers me, and I have to not force myself not to get into an argument online. There's always this misconception that Microsoft is abandoning Hyper-V, right? Like Hyper-V is dead. It's no. Or there's no innovation coming to Windows Server. It's all going subscription. You have to go to Azure Stack HCI to get the latest and greatest. And there's just it's a little bit Microsoft's marketing fault, maybe for not phrasing it so clearly. But the honest truth is, If for whatever reason you don't want to go down the Azure Stack HCI path, which there's plenty of reasons why you may not want to. Like if you're a hoster, for example, you legally cannot. Like you cannot be a hoster, run Azure Stack HCI, and run your customers' workloads on there and pay them. Like it like violates the EULA. But Windows Server, especially 2022 and the 2025, which is in preview right now, goodness, all the things that they were innovating on rapidly in HCI kind of like make their way back downstream to the Windows Server SKU, to the point where Server 2025 is going to have all those really ridiculous improvements that were recently introduced at the OS level of HCI, like really good dedupe. They rewrote the deduplication engine in HCI. So if you're running your storage on ReFS file systems, your dedupe is going to be significantly better performant for active workloads like VDI and SQL Server, if you're into that. Like if you're trying to cram as much in as you can onto your storage, which is good for the small mom and pop shops, because maybe you don't want to spend a small fortune on NVMe. Well, now you can run, 80% compression ratio or dedupe ratio on a smaller set of physical NVMe drives for VDI and things that dedupe really well. So Windows Server, perfectly viable alternative. The other thing that I haven't really seen Microsoft talk about a lot is they are also improving their storage, like their storage stack from the bottom up. They're innovating. There was a video recently at Windows Server Summit or whatever that their conference is, where they demoed NVMe read and write performance is up like 70% just because of like some changes in the subsystem. And I personally got my hands on a preview build of it, and I confirmed it. It's like significantly faster. So if you're, like you said, SQL Server hosters, or like you're running advanced SQL Server workloads, or doing a lot of ETL and transforms, you just need fast storage. Even Windows Server is getting those improvements, and you would be a fool not to investigate a little time into that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all really, really great points. Well, anything kind of final that you would leave our viewers with? If an enterprise is wrestling with what do we do about this VMware situation, what would be kind of your final advice to them?
The answer is, if you have to look at holistically, like what you guys do. If your team is 90% running VM workloads, like obviously Microsoft solution is going to check the box for you. If you're worried about storage performance, like I really like vSAN or whatever hyperconverged solution, or even disaggregated solution using VMware, can I use Microsoft? Can I use Windows Server? Yes. So I just talked ad nauseum about storage performance increases, and Storage Spaces Direct is hands down. I will die on this hill. Storage Spaces Direct is hands down the most performant and stable and resilient hyperconverged solution out there, period. I'm not saying like that's opinion. Prove to me in 2024 where you have problems with Storage Spaces Direct, and I will go in battle with you about it ad nauseum. So storage performance, don't need to worry about that. If you're worried about a single pane of glass management, there's multiple tools out there that can do that for you too. Is it as feature rich as vCenter? No, but does it check the box and accomplish what you're trying to do 90% of the time? The answer is yes. Kubernetes hosting, yes, check the box. A resounding check. Like AKS Hybrid is awesome. Use it at scale. Works great. VDI. If you are looking to host VDI and you want to get away from like VMware Horizon, or if like you're running Citrix DAS or whatever it's called now, AVD HCI is one of many solutions that you can run for like multi-session or even personal session hosts. It works. Check the box. Guess what? I run it at scale. We use it at Commvault. It works really well. There's very few reasons not to use Microsoft solution. It's just a matter of you balancing is the really gross expensive bill worth it versus what do you do with 90% of your life. So I can't put a gun to your head and tell you, but be a fool not to at least have that discussion.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really great point. Well, hey, just want to wrap up by saying, hey, this has been a great conversation about where VMware is going, where Hyper-V's at today, and just the fact that Hyper-V and Azure Stack HCI really are great platforms that are worth looking at for enterprises. I want to thank Ernie. Thank you for coming on the podcast. This has been a great discussion. Always enjoy getting into things, discussions with you. And thanks to our listeners. Come back for the next episode. We've got several more people lined up, really great guests coming on. You can also find more content at richardsoncloud.com. So thanks again, Ernie. Thanks.
Yep, no worries. Have a great day.